for it.
As a yes. All right, so I'll call the curriculum and instruction meeting to order at 4:37 p.m. And I'd like to welcome our guest who will be with us to talk about the ESL RFP that was presented. So just want to thank the people who were on the selection committee. That's Diana Carpio, who's our ESL liaison, Erica DePalma, who is our SPED ad hoc committee chair, Donalda Chumney, who's our new curriculum chief, and Dr. Case, who is was our interim curriculum chief. So thanks to everyone for your hard work and for your time. And at this point, Sandy, do you want to say anything, or Donalda? I'm sorry.
Yes. Well, I'd just like to introduce our guests, okay, and tell everybody that we are about to have two presentations tonight. And the first one is from one of the firms who has submitted an RFP, a request for proposal, and they were selected as one of the two outstanding proposals, and we have invited them tonight to make a presentation to our esteemed board members and to answer a few questions. So the person I am familiar with is Kim Perrone, who I know is the either the president, the owner of Schoolworks, and I'm going to turn it over to her, if that's all right, Ms. Harris, and allow her to introduce her colleagues and make her presentation. So Ms. Perrone, I think that if you can make your presentation, we would like to be able to, for 15 or 20 minutes, we would like to have an opportunity to ask you a few questions after that.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. And nice to meet you all. I am Kim Perrone. I'm the president and owner of Schoolworks. And I'm joined by two of my colleagues, Dr. Nancy Clare, who you can see in the Brady Bunch box. She's our project specialist in terms of her supports and her expertise with English language learners. So she'll be speaking about that. And I've known Nancy for a really long time. And then I've also got Jennifer Strock, who's our director of business development, on the line as well. And Jen has been the primary contact in terms of facilitating the setup of this meeting and made sure that we were able to respond to the RFP in a timely manner and all of that. So that's the Schoolworks team for tonight. I would be delighted to share a PowerPoint with you. However, I'm getting a message that says the host has disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, so the host is listening, and I hope I can certainly text him and see what we can.
I'm right here.
Oh, thank you, Roland. Is it possible to let them share?
Yeah, I'm working on that.
Great, thank you so much.
Don't we love technology?
Oh, yes. Tonight's been a little bit of a challenge, but we're working on it.
Is it snowing where you are?
A small amount.
Well, I know that you're probably a little bit short on time, and I want to make sure that we move expeditiously through this process so that you can also move on with your meeting. So maybe what I'll do is just start by giving you a little introduction to Schoolworks and Nancy and myself, and then wherever we pick up, I'd be happy to screen share the slides that we've prepared for you today, if that makes sense. So again, my name is, okay, great. My name is Kim Perrone. I'm the president and owner of Schoolworks. I have a long history working with Schoolworks. I first started as a consultant and was actually, further back than that, a client of Schoolworks, but I've always admired Schoolworks' work and started as a consultant when it came time for me to pursue consulting as a career. And, now 13 years later, I actually own the company. So I really believe in our mission, which is to have a positive impact on student achievement and well-being, and also support the development of the capacity of educators to enable that as well. And I think I've known Nancy for probably as long as I've been involved in schoolwork. She was actually involved with schoolworks as a consultant long before I became involved in the organization. So she's got a long history, not only with schoolworks, but also as an educator. And Nancy, I don't know if you want to say a quick word about
Okay,
yourself.
I'm hearing from Roland that you must be able to share your screen now.
Okay, great.
That's what he
I'll
said.
do that while Nancy is saying hello.
Hi, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you. I'm proudest, I guess, mostly as I started my career as a bilingual and ESL teacher living in Puerto Rico many, many moons ago. I've dedicated my professional life to the equitable and high quality education for English language learners. So I'm just thrilled to be part of the SchoolWorks team, and I'm thrilled to be meeting all of you.
So first of all, we just want to say thank you for your commitment to focusing in on the equitable access of programs and opportunities for English language learners and really all of your students. We think that the work you're doing is, the commitment that you've demonstrated to that is really admirable, and we're honored to be here talking to you a little bit about how we might be able to support you in those efforts. So what makes SchoolWorks a little bit different? We are a certified women-owned business, and we have that's kind of a nice way to get involved with the diversity of it, and really support diverse business owners at this point in time. We're all about collecting evidence and being completely evidence-based. All of the work that we do is based, and the recommendations that we make are based on evidence that we collect as we get to know you and your schools in your particular district. Everyone who works for and with SchoolWorks is a former educator, including myself. I'm a former high school Spanish teacher. I've been a department head at a high school Spanish department, and as have all of our managing directors and all of our consultants. So we really understand the hard work that educators do every day, working with teachers, working with kids, and working with their families. And that really put that at the forefront of all of our work as well. We've been doing evaluations and making program recommendations since 1998. So we have a long history of doing this work, not just Nancy and myself, but the company as a whole. And so what we really have tried to do over the years is build upon the knowledge and the expertise that we've accumulated in evaluating programs across the country over these 23 years, I guess now, and really use that to your advantage. And we're a trusted partner. We are an approved turnaround partner in multiple state departments of education, including Massachusetts, Alabama, Colorado, Indiana, Louisiana, Maryland, Minnesota, Ohio, Rhode Island, and Tennessee, just to name a few. So we really are working nationally across the country and have demonstrated results in terms of improving student learning and achievement. So that's a big part of what we do. Just to give you a quick snapshot, here are some of our clients from around the country, so you can get a sense of who we work with. We do tend to work with not only departments of education, but city school districts. We work with charter networks around the country, individual schools who are engaged in continuous improvement work, foundations who are investing in a number of initiatives, such as Good to Great initiatives and those kinds of things, as well as education providers themselves. So, organizations that are delivering educational programs like the KIT Foundation. We've worked with National Heritage Academies in the past, and so on and so forth. We offer a range of services. We call it a continuum that really starts on one end, working around accountability and accountability systems with many of those state Department of Education providers that I mentioned. And that really benefits us because we understand the high standards that schools and districts are held to across the country. And then on the far right-hand side of that spectrum, we also provide a whole bunch of leadership and school developer support. So what we like to do is say that we take what we've learned about policy and use that knowledge to inform the day-to-day work of school that we do in the schools that we partner with. And similarly, because we are engaged in working directly with school leaders and teachers across the country, we also understand the hard work and the challenges that schools face. And we like to use that to inform our work at the district level and with our State Department of Education partners when we're collaborating. So we really do, take the policy and practice and meld them together. Within that spectrum, we also provide a range of quality reviews for both high stakes and diagnostic or continuous improvement processes, as well as instructional supports and leadership supports. I think I mentioned at the start that measuring equitable access for diverse learners is a key part of what Schoolworks does in all of our work. We actually have a set of criteria and indicators that embedded within our Schoolworks quality criteria, which is a framework for most of our work, that is about whether or not schools promote strong cultures of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and ensure that safe and supportive environment for all students. So you can kind of take a look at some of the criterion that we look for when we engage with schools directly. And we have a long history of doing specialized reviews, such as the one that you are hoping to accomplish over the course of the next 2 years. Just to name a few of the most recent engagements, we're currently working with the Massachusetts Department of Early Education and Care to help them understand the preschool, it's really the birth to 3rd grade continuum, and work with their private partners in provision of services to kids, as well as the public providers as well, to make sure that there's cohesion in their programming, with a special attention to English language learners and special education students. We're also working with the School District of Philadelphia currently to do a special education program evaluation of a charter school that they oversee. We recently partnered with the North Adams Public Schools, the North Berkshire School Union, and Adams Cheshire Regional School District to do a comprehensive review of early childhood programs and special education systems across those 3 districts, because they do share some services and they wanted to make sure that all of their kids were getting equitable access as well. And another example, recent example, is we did a district review of the special education system and processes for Pueblo City schools in Colorado. I want to talk a little bit about what you're hoping to accomplish and what we've proposed, and then answer any questions that you might have about that. So you indicated in the RFP that you wanted to do a real-time quantitative, qualitative review of the educational opportunities offered to English learners in your district. And so how we would work with you to get that done at Schoolworks is the way that we engage all of our partners. We always assign a dedicated project manager to oversee all of the work and serve as the primary contact and project lead. So you would have a person, we pre-identified Jake Schmitz in our proposal, who's a former school principal and is leading a number of our district-based initiatives. In fact, he's leading the specialized review for the School District of Philadelphia currently, just as one of many of his projects. And the way that we would work with you is first schedule a project kickoff where we would review our general approach, make any adjustments if we needed to, identify the stakeholders on both sides, and start to schedule some initial tasks. And then from there, we'd build out a very detailed project plan for you that would be an Excel-based plan so that everybody knew at all steps along the way where we are in relation to project goals and planned activities, so that we're making sure that we're accomplishing things in a timely manner. And we would also be having periodic meetings between our 2 organizations just to make sure that we're communicating our progress to you. If we need to problem solve around anything, we can do that. You can certainly provide us feedback so that we can make adjustments as necessary. But really, it's a way for us to live our one of our core values of collaboration and learning, and making sure that we're working together. So we know that in year 1, you're hoping to really review your English language learner programs and those instructional opportunities that you're offering within the schools, so that you can determine your capacity development and technical assistance needs that aligns perfectly with the Schoolworks continuum of services, where the quality review is kind of where we start most of our engagements. So here's just a quick overview of what we've proposed, and I'm assuming I know that your team has read that proposal in great detail, so I won't go through this, but the overview of the steps are really to make sure that we're collaborating around the development of a protocol and tools so that we can take what Schoolworks has as a starting point, customize it to specifically meet your needs and your priorities, adopt your language, et cetera, et cetera. And then we would work together in a calibration system just to provide a training, make sure that everybody's on the same page, and ensure that there's a common understanding of those high quality practices that you're looking for. Then Schoolworks would engage in the program evaluation itself. And I do have some slides on the detail of that, but I'm going to hold those to the end in case you have questions about them. I won't take the time to go through that right now. But we would engage in the program evaluation, which has multiple components. And then subsequent to that, work with you and your team or identified team to begin a planning process where, using the findings of that evaluation, you all could start to plan what your next steps will be, how you're going to prioritize those, what resources you'll be able to devote to them, who will be leading those efforts, and start to establish some benchmarks around implementation that we can assist you in monitoring potentially in year 2, or you can self-monitor. So a little bit more detail on that planning process, because I know it's really important. You're already thinking about those next steps and what you're hoping to accomplish. And how Schoolworks engages in that planning process is we really take the time to analyze the current state, which we do through the findings of the review process. We'll facilitate a process through which you all will prioritize your areas for growth, because we know, there are so many things that we could potentially work on, but focus is really important. And so we'll lead you through our process of picking the ones that you want to focus on first, and then maybe establish some tiers of other priorities that you want to keep advancing. We'll do a root cause analysis of some of the challenges and obstacles that you might be facing, and then develop a strategy for addressing those obstacles and challenges, and ultimately envision and identify your preferred state. Where will you be? How will you know, where will you be when you are successful, and how will we know that you've gotten there? And all of that will come together in a comprehensive plan that Schoolworks will compile for you so that you can share with your stakeholders as well. So in year 2, you'll go from there. And you said in the RFP that you really wanted to then examine individual pathways for kids from kindergarten through grade 12, including those opportunities for your English ESL kids, your bilingual students, and your dual language program students. And so we've included in here secondary evaluation processes that we can use to do that, to evaluate the kind of the pathways that you articulated. These can also be used, these reviews can also be used to monitor progress of implementation of your action plan that you may have identified in year 1. So that's an option as well. And I'm going to pause there, and because I've been talking for a really long time at you, and I'm sure you have lots of questions, and you probably want to hear from Nancy as well. So I'm going to pause there and open it up for questions from the group.
So I'm going to ask our board members if they would like to ask any questions.
So we have a list of questions. Should we wing it, or should we use the list of questions?
Well, why don't we start with the questions that we wanted to ask based on the reading of the proposal, and then we can see where we go.
All right, or we can do this. Does anybody have any questions that are outside of our questions for discussion?
Well, why don't we start, Sherelle, if it's okay, why don't we start with the questions that we have? Would that be
That's
okay?
fine, Candy. I just wanted to know if anyone had anything outside so I can understand our time frame.
I see.
So the first question that we have is, how many members of your team will be devoted to this project? And I believe you answered that. And how often will they be here in Norwalk?
Well, let me just supplement what I shared earlier. We'll have a primary project manager who, as I mentioned, I think was pre-identified as Jake Schmitz. Nancy will be a project specialist and working hand in hand with Jake based on her knowledge and her expertise that she brings to the team. And then we've also identified varying team members for the structure of the review. And actually, I can just very quickly scroll down to some of these slides where you can take a look. For example, in the year one program evaluation, we identified 4 SchoolWorks team members for the review component. During the planning process, we typically have, it would probably be led by Jake or another team member who participated on the review potentially to do that. So how many people, we try and make sure that there's cohesion and that you have a consistent touch point and people who are working with you throughout the duration of the project, but we're also flexible to make sure that if we need more people on site, for example, during the district calibration session, we have more facilitators available for you. And we would be there, we can work with you on that, but as identified as touch points within the proposal for the reviews, for the planning sessions. Certainly we would be available by phone or Zoom for all of the regular check-ins and progress monitoring and project management. SchoolWorks is very flexible in terms of making sure that we can connect with you to answer any questions that you might have. So it would really be based on need.
Well, to add to that, I mean, Sherelle, could I just ask one quick question? Then Dr. Claire, who's the English language learner expert, would she be available for all of the classroom observations and the student shadowings and the reviews of the schools?
Sure, absolutely. I'd love it. It's my favorite part of the work.
Good. I'm sorry, Sherelle.
Does anybody else have a question, or does it want to ask the next question, or do you want me to move on? Diana, are you there? Do you want to ask question number 2?
I'm here.
Do you want to
Sure,
ask question number 2?
I'll ask number 2. How would you plan to go about evaluating and extending the dual language program? And can you do me a favor? Can you bring the screen down so we could see each other?
How would we go about evaluating the dual language program?
Yes.
In the same way, the same basic process that we would go about evaluating any school. We would first put a team together, a qualified team together. We would look at the goals that you wanted us to evaluate. We would create those together. We would go in, we would look at instruction. We would do a document review. We would look at instruction. And we would interview teachers, parents, and students that are involved in the program to get a sense of how successful the program is, what the strengths of the program are, and what the areas that need to be strengthened need to be. So that's how we would go about it, which is really exciting. I just wanted to follow on to say it's really exciting that you have dual language programs, because I'll just give you my bias here. I think they're a very positive way I think they're wonderful. And I'm excited to be working in any dual language program.
Okay, and just on a side note, I know that it's not part of our questions, but we did discuss it. My curiosity is, how would you handle evaluating children that are in the SPED program that have fallen through or are in that program because of the language barrier? How do you evaluate that?
Well, first, can I speak first, Kim, and then maybe you can add on.
Go
But
ahead.
I mean, whenever we're looking at students, special education students and English language learners, we have to be really careful that we're looking at, is it because of a language proficiency problem, or is it because there's something deeper going on? So at first, we would want to look very carefully at what tools are you using to evaluate students? What language are you using to evaluate students? So we would look very carefully at that. Kim, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, I would just also add that, the SchoolWorks quality criterion, in particular, our classroom observation form, is backed by research that is looking at practices that are effective with both English language learners as well as special education students or students with any disability. And so when we go in and we observe classroom instruction, we're collecting data on whether or not those practices are in place. So we're not necessarily evaluating the children in that regard. What we're doing is looking at the instructional practices to look at the effectiveness of those. And, you know, I don't know, this is what the review process will help us reveal as we triangulate all sorts of evidence. One of the things that we will look at is the effectiveness of instruction, particularly given some of your, the models and the different pathways you have, whether it's dual language, whether it's the SIOP program, you know, whatever your methodologies are we seeing evidence of effective practices in those classrooms as well?
Mhm.
Okay, I saw that Erica has a follow-up question to that.
I did. So I just wanted to confirm that, so when we think about the intersection of multi-language learners and special ed, it's on both sides of the spectrum. So there's an issue commonly with child find associated with multi-language learners, and on the other side of the spectrum, as they get older, there's tends to be a disproportionate rate in which they're referred to special education because they were missed in child find, right? So
Correct.
the practices cover that spectrum.
Yeah, so as part of the document review, you know, that's what Nancy was referring to. We
Yeah.
would really look at your policies and practices and fidelity of implementation around child find procedures, what tools you're using, whether or not they were appropriate for those particular kids. We'd supplement that with interviews with staff members. We do surveys as well. We talked about surveys, I believe, in the proposal. And then those are really the identification procedures, right? And then you have to look at what's actually going on in the classroom and the effectiveness of the services that are being provided to kids. So we would be looking at that as well. As part of the document review, we'd also obviously be looking at students' copies of samples of students' IEPs. Of course, we wouldn't be able to look at every IEP in the district, but we'd randomly pull samples and take a look at those, whether or not the goals were appropriate. They, you know, included, you know, goals to ensure that English language learners and their specific needs were being met. So it would be quite comprehensive in that regard.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question, Erica?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay.
I wanted to just add a key piece of that is also understanding teachers' understanding of the process. How well do teachers understand the identification process? And then once students are identified, how well do teachers understand what it means to have a student who is both a language learner and a special education student? So a part of the process is our interviews. Yes, we go into classrooms. Yes, we do the document review, but then we have an interview process where we talk to the staff who are actually implementing instruction for special education students.
So can I ask if you have had experience in, you know, building out or working with the school system to build out a dual language program, you know, from a core program to a district-wide model?
Boy, I've been doing this for about 30 years. So I have worked with a number of dual language programs. I'm on the board of a school right now in Mexico that has a dual language component. So am I there on the day-to-day of building the program? No, but I've been involved, and I'm going to just, I'll put it out again. I'm going to put my bias out. I am a proponent of dual language. I think they're challenging, and I think a lot has to do with your staffing, whether you have sufficient numbers of qualified bilingual teachers. I know that's a big challenge. I think the curriculum is a challenge. I think there's lots of challenges, but I think the benefits to students who become fully bilingual is really important.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone else have?
Anyone else?
Sherelle?
Barbara, are you there?
I'm here.
Do you have any questions?
I don't. Thank you for asking. I thought the materials were comprehensive and the presentation was as well. And my question is, are we voting tonight or is there a selection committee that's, so we're just, we're just hearing the presentations. Excellent. Just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Barbara. Yeah.
And then we'll take it to the full board. I do have a question. can you tell me like what your assessment snapshots look like and how do you track progress, the trend lines of progress?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. Yeah, so the varying assessments have different levels of deliverables, and I think I can send you the slide deck that we prepare. They kind of summarize for you. But the district level review, for example, is like a 12 to 15 page report that will have narrative findings supplemented by description of the evidence that we use to come to those findings. And the evidence will include document review. We always report on trends. We don't report on outliers. So document review, stakeholder focus groups and interviews, the results from the surveys, which are quantitative in nature, and of course the classroom observation data, which is quantitative in nature. Because this is a multi-year engagement, and we will have the opportunity to revisit some of your schools and collect data, we'll collect baseline data, then we'll collect data in the future. There will be that opportunity to do a comparison. And so, when we do that for some of our clients, sometimes we put together like summary documents, or sometimes we call them trend reports, where we can actually track progress over multiple years, almost like an annual report or summary that it's great for you. It kind of shows you the return on investment. It also helps you identify like what's working and what might not be working. Maybe you want to adjust plans slightly, or invest more resources, or make some strategic decisions about how you're going to move forward in a particular area. That's one way in which we track progress. Another area is when we work with schools and develop action plans from a process like this. We actually have the goals. As I mentioned during the presentation, you will set some goals and some benchmarks as part of that process. Your project manager, again, we proposed Jake, would work with you to kind of provide some friendly accountability and gather data from you as part of the regular check-ins around whether or not you're able to make progress on those goals. So there's some informal tracking that happens as well. And we usually leave it up to our clients as to how they want to document that. For some of our clients, there's like a running Google Doc where they would do that. And other clients have more formalized trackers, that might have like Excel spreadsheets, and they'll automatically populate with red, yellow, green, color coding, just to say kind of where you are in relation to where you want to be. So we really leave that up to our clients to say what's going to work best for you in your situation. But those are all options and part of the services that we provide as project managers.
Mm-hmm. But if I could just ask, maybe hopefully the last question, because we're going to have to move on. Can you just talk to us for a minute about English language learners, and about what your company really believes that they need, what your company really believes the programs for English language learners should look like, and how you would support our district in trying to create the best programs possible.
Do you want to take the first go around at that, Nancy?
Sure, I'll take a stab. To begin with, first of all, English language learners they're not one monolithic group. They come in all shapes and sizes with all kinds of backgrounds and challenges. However, every single English language learner, as well as all children, deserve a right to a high quality education. So that's the first step. I think there are a number of programs and strategies that we know a lot about what works. And there are a number of programs and strategies that do work well with English language learners. We know that. So how one would design and work with a district would depend very, very much on the profile of the English language learners, the constraints that you may have with staffing, the materials, and the appetite for the commitment, the district commitment. I know that we know that English language learners need opportunities to learn language and to learn content. We know that's a longitudinal process. And the development of academic language is over time. So once an English language learner, always an English language learner. So we know that the curriculum, they need to have access to standards and the curriculum. So they need a comprehensive program of academic content across their K-12 experience. We know we have to provide high quality instruction and materials in both languages. We know that English language learners need valid and fair assessments. And then we also know that English language learners need a school-wide commitment and a district-wide commitment to ensure that ELLs get the academic content that they need and the first language support. So we are going to tailor make our work with you. If you were a district that had a number of very high quality bilingual teachers, I would advise, let's go dual language all the way. But depending on the resources that you have would depend on the different program models that we would advise and that we would help support. So that's my 2 cents. And I wanted to say one other thing though. When I learned about the possibility of this work, I went onto your website and you've got some really good foundational things on the website. I looked at, your ELP standards and the linguistic supports. I saw there that there's examples from Stanford University, and Stanford knows what they're doing and they have great models. I know looks like you're using Colorín Colorado, which is a great resource. You're using go-to strategies from the Center for Applied Linguistics, and they know what they're doing as well. I noticed that you're combining, I think you are, these are documents. We'll find out what's really when we come to the schools, we'll find out what's really going on, but that you're combining RTI or the SRBI with English language learners. So you have a lot of great, I was looking at your website, I was getting excited because there's lots to work with.
Okay, well, we thank you so much. Sherelle, that's great.
Ma'am, thank you very, very much for taking time to meet with us today and presenting. So thank you.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay
Thank
healthy,
you so much.
everybody.
Good night. Bye.
That's great.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. So, we're not through. We have another presentation. So, Roland, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. I'm just working on getting the ladies out of the, what do you call it? The waiting room and putting the other people in. Just give me a moment here.
Sandy,
Yes.
do you want to take any debrief comments from anyone just while
No,
people's fresh?
not at this time. We're going to move right on because we're running very much over time, Donalda.
I just
So we
wanted to alert the chair that a few members have a meeting at 5:30 as well.
That's right.
So if you wanted to take care of the minutes, we could do that now, or we could just table them for the next meeting.
Is Roland ready?
Yes, ma'am. I'm about ready to have these people in.
Barbara, are you okay if we table to the next meeting?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you all.
Let these other two people in?
Yes, please.
Okay.
The next company that we're going to hear from, everyone, is West Ed. And we're going to hear, hi, we're going to hear from Aida Walke. Hi, Aida, welcome.
Hello, everybody.
Good. Aida, you're representing, you have somebody else with you tonight, or you?
Yes, this is my colleague, Leslie Hamburger, and she will be joining us for a while because unfortunately she has another meeting to go to.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Well, Aida, again, we indicated that yours was one of two proposals that was reviewed, and everybody was very interested to hear from you and from West Ed. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to expand a little bit from the proposal. I know proposals are disembodied texts, and I wish we could send videos instead where we explain and elaborate, etc., but that's not the case. So we are very thankful that you have invited us today to amplify. So I'll try to speak for about 10 or 12 minutes. And then the best thing is that you actually ask your questions because, you know, as you read it, I'm sure you frame questions in your mind. It was very exciting for us to see your request for proposals because it set a wonderful tone about being able to really understand what is going on currently with English learners in the district, placed in front of a national landscape that really replicates the dismal failures that our students suffer. But the beauty of your proposal was that it also had tremendous hope and expectations. And we liked the Commissioner's Cardona's words, of course, that it is extremely important to value students' languages and to nourish them as students develop English. And of course, he may just be our next Secretary of Education. So we are keeping fingers crossed because we do think that it is absolutely necessary to turn the education of English learners at the moment. And we think that in a district such as Norwalk, it is perfectly possible to do that. You have the right people at the helm, and I am sure you have wonderful teachers who feel themselves frustrated that their English learners are not succeeding as they should. In order to help them succeed, a number of ideas need to change. For example, the notion that English learners, as they learn English, they abandon their native languages. Quite the opposite. We are living in an increasingly, people don't say this anymore, but we used to talk about the flat world, right? Where exchanges everywhere, people spoke more than just one language. In fact, the United States is the only advanced country where multilingualism is not the norm. And so in order to collaborate in this new world where texts are increasingly more complex, we need to be able to develop all kinds of other linguistic skills. We also used to think that language was constructed in the head of the learner. So teachers talked and students absorbed. And then one day, miraculously, they opened their mouths and perfect productions would come out. Well, we know now that in fact, language is socially constructed, that it depends on the opportunities students receive to engage in activity that language develops. But furthermore, it is not only language that develops. So we don't teach language separated from conceptual understandings and from analytic practices, which are the operations that we put these understandings through. So for example, if I invite an 8th grader to learn about the French Revolution, and I want to explain what a revolution is, I am teaching conceptual understandings. What is a revolution? I am also inviting them to learn analytic practices, to compare and contrast, to be able to identify what are the features of a revolution. And at the same time, they are developing the language. So there is a simultaneous and integrated, inseparable development of the three. Now we know this from theory, but unfortunately, in most places, students are still taught language as if language existed separate from curricular development. So for example, sheltered instruction and PSYOP, which are two common ways of looking at the education of English learners, look at language as if it was a sequence of structures and forms that need to be taught in a specific sequence. And so for 2 or 3 years, Students learn certain complexity, grammatical complexity of language, but in between, they cannot learn sophisticated conceptual understandings. And so they lag behind. I mean, the United States right now, more than a third of all English learners are in high school. And of that third, more than 2/3 have been English learners since they entered school in kindergarten or first grade. That is terrible, that you have students who have been English learners for 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Why is that? Because we dosify the language. And so texts are lowered and written in this unappealing and challenging language because comprehensible input, as SIOP proposes, needs to be offered to students. That is, language that is just a little bit beyond their level of proficiency. We believe that we need to engage students in ambitious learning, and learning that is not just exciting, but learning that is well supported. And so one of the things that we do is we build the expertise of teachers and of educators to recognize what is quality learning with English learners. And if we go that way, that quality learning is equally good for all other students. So we have specialized in the Quality Teaching for English Learners program, which I direct and Leslie co-directs, has existed now for 20 years. 20 years ago, we were the outliers theoretically, because we talked about this simultaneous development of concept, analysis, and language. Today, we're not the outliers theoretically, but we're still the outliers in terms of practice, because we still don't see large numbers of schools that can do it. And we hope you can do it. So our proposal, following your request, contemplates first an evaluation of an assessment, a taking the temperature of the kinds of services that English learners are offered. But we are using that process as a way of building a vision for the colleagues from the district. So initially we will choose, or jointly, colleagues will be chosen from leadership positions to understand and develop a clear vision of what is quality learning with English learners at different levels. And then we have developed in our work lots of video exemplars. So it will not just be talk, but we will articulate the principles that should guide quality instruction. And we have developed a number of protocols to be able to gauge that presence of quality or not through the protocols. So initially, as I said, leaders will develop that vision, but immediately after, we are proposing that teachers join in, because while there is an analysis of data that already exists, there will be visits to classrooms. Some of them will be done exclusively, or we are proposing that we do them exclusively ourselves, but there will be many that will be together with these mixed teams of leaders, teachers, and one of us. So we will have several groups simultaneously visiting classes with a clear vision of what is quality, and with protocols, observing for 10 minutes and then coming out and writing down what was observed. And this is done so as to gauge the quality, the caliber of education students are receiving, but at the same time, it will help us, plus the use of other instruments, to understand where teachers are in their expertise to carry out quality education. Because we need to understand where they are placed to be able to, with them ambitiously, to run and develop their expertise so that they increase the quality of their engagement. Leslie, before you go, do you want to jump in and say something? Because otherwise you'll appear to be mute.
No, I just wanted to thank the group for this opportunity and to say that the collaborative approach that we propose is really central in not only identifying what is present, but in developing sort of the motivation, the capacity, and the will of the system as a whole to move forward in making changes for multilingual learners and English learners.
Yes, and so let me pick up on that motivation and excitement factor. We act in proleptic ways. In other words, we look at teachers and students not for who they are right now, although we understand where they are positioned, but for whom they can be. And all of our work is premised in that attitude. And as Leslie said, participants, and we have done work in New York City, in Arlington, in many places. We wrote about that in the proposal. You know, teachers get so excited about it that we capture the energy and the enthusiasm plus the knowledge that we build to turn around and to change the nature of schools. So that is the plan. Collaborative evaluation, determination, and an understanding of the trajectories that students follow in the district. What courses do they take? Where, for example, could we accelerate? Where can we remove barriers? Because you read also in the proposal that we received a few months ago a big grant from the Institute of Educational Sciences, part of the Department of Education, to run a national research and development center to improve education for English learners in secondary schools. And one of the studies, one of 4 really substantive studies, looks nationwide at the trajectories that students follow in terms of coursework in order to find where interruptions of patterns need to occur. And we built on recent knowledge that has come out in the last 3 years that, for example, mainstreaming students declaring that they leave the English learners category, even before they are ready by tests, but they are ready in the eyes of teachers. And they will need support, but as long as that support is offered, students do far better. Those students who are mainstreamed a little bit earlier than they should, according to grades, in fact, end up surpassing their native speaking peers in terms of academic achievement. While students who are retained in the category languish and become that awful term, long-term English learners. And so we need to think that the kinds of opportunities students are offered, the challenge tied to the support, determine whether they successfully become bilingual or not. We also do work in Spanish. In fact, Leslie and I are both native speakers of Spanish. And so we also run programs in Spanish, and we work with teachers in helping them also refine their Spanish in order to carry out ambitious teaching with the students they have in front of them. But perhaps I should stop here because I'm never thoughtful about time to see the kinds of questions that you have. And then, you know, Leslie and I can respond.
Bueno, para empezar, gracias por venir esta noche y estar aquí con nosotros.
Bueno, es un placer estar aquí y realmente cruzamos los dedos para poder trabajar con ustedes. Porque
Gracias.
que puede ser un excelente ejemplo, no solo para el estado de Connecticut, sino para todo el país.
Muchas gracias. Okay,
So
Cheryl,
Diana,
did
do
you want to start?
take the first question?
Sure. How many members of your team will be devoted to this project, and how often will they be in Norwalk?
Well, I better let Leslie answer this question, but
Apologies, I was on mute.
yeah.
So a few things. We have a team that is planned to work on the project that includes 6 individuals with different levels of expertise. I could show a slide, but I don't want to, I think I'd rather see your faces. And the thinking is that we have experts in secondary schools, in primary grades, in Spanish dual language instruction, multilingual instruction, experts in the discipline. So we have a math expert, a language arts expert, somebody with more specific experience in newcomers. So a really wide population, like a really wide team to really address kind of all of the interests and needs that we might need, what we might have in Norwalk. And with regards to time, what we're thinking about is that the work is divided into sort of in phases, as you saw in the proposal, and different team members come in for different phases. On site, we are planning sort of an extended period of time of about 6 days on site for data collection activities. And then there are other activities that can be more distal, like sort of ongoing meetings. And also follow-ups to that data collection to really work on developing a report and educating sort of our expanded team and our core team of Norwalk partners in the findings and the recommendations that would be coming out of the work.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Case, do you want to take the next question? I just want to make sure we're asking the same questions of each just for equity.
Absolutely. So, you know, we're very interested, and of course, I know that you have dual language, a very extensive experience with dual language. But have you had experience in building out a dual language program? You know, we have a core program that we're interested in possibly building out. What would that look like, or what is your experience in doing that?
Well, we have not had experience in strengthening and developing dual programs. And what is really essential, first of all, is that teachers understand the kinds of assets that students bring to bear in schools, and that they understand that the road ahead, where their work lies between where students are and where students need to be, is their responsibility to craft and enact. One of the largest issues with dual language programs is that they are presented as equalizers, because students who are language minoritized, that is those who do not speak English as a native language, and students who are language majority, who speak English as a second language, coexist in the same classroom and develop both language and content in both languages. However, in most of the examples studied by researchers, the inequities that exist socially and economically outside of school are replicated in the classroom unwillingly. So for example, teachers who are teaching in Spanish lower their Spanish a bit in consideration for native speakers of English. But that low Spanish does not help the native speakers of Spanish develop their Spanish. They need higher levels of Spanish. For us, the answer is give high levels to everybody, but amplify the supports offered. Diversify the kinds of tasks that students engage in. So in, for example, a multi-level group, then students help each other. And as we well know, students tend to learn best from each other. So we think that it is very important to be mindful that entering native speakers of English and native speakers of Spanish are not at the same social level. And so with that awareness in mind, one needs to construct equal challenge, equal levels of, equal no, but equitable levels of support for students. Because treating everybody equally is benefiting some and condemning others, right? So we want equity. We want everybody will meet the same goals, but we will offer different types of support so that they all get there. So that is the biggest issue in dual language research, and one that a few programs are beginning to combat positively. So the same ideas that we propose for learning English for multilingual students apply in dual immersion. In other words, we value the resources students have. We understand that we teach simultaneously concepts, analysis, and language. We do not teach just language, but we teach disciplinary or subject matter content. And we do not teach language as if it was the curriculum, as if it developed in linear ways. Language develops in complex, spiraling ways. We learn to suggest one way today. We learn to suggest in different ways next week. And we expand our ways of suggesting as we move through life. There's no, you learn to suggest, that's it. Now you learn to do something else, right? So this linearity doesn't make any sense, but unfortunately it's prevalent in most educational offerings for students who are learning English as an additional language.
Well, thank you.
Sorry, I was going to add a point before I have to run off. And I think in your thinking about expanding or growing your programs for dual language, the considerations of staff capacity that we are very focused on are central, but also thinking about sort of the structural components of what do you have to have in place in order to carry out that kind of instruction that Aida is talking about are key. And we are definitely in the capacity to support schools in the district in thinking about the conditions that need to be set for that kind of quality learning to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Erica and Diana, do you want to ask your questions? So I think those were very important about this SPED and the ELL combination.
Diana, I think, is muted. Diana, you're muted.
I was going to say Erica can take that one because it was a combination of both.
So our question was about the intersection.
Erica, do you want to present both?
Sure. Our question was about the intersection of multi-language learners and special education. And there's two ends of the spectrum. So there is an issue with child find as it relates to multi-language learners, and then a disproportionate referral rates when they're older to special education. So can you just speak to your experience with educating staff on solving for both problems?
Yes. Well, there is an immense disproportionality nationwide in the identification of special education students. In fact, the United States has more than 500% the number of students identified as special ed than the country that is the closest to them. So, you know, if you go to Europe, teachers are horrified by the presence of special ed students. And in fact, it has been suggested, Ray McDermott once wrote that once the category exists, and unfortunately, there are economic incentives for the category, then more students are identified. So there are these very non-intended impacts of policies. So first is, let's have our eyes wide open and let us really understand if every student in special ed belongs in special ed. But more importantly, to the point that you're asking, will the approach that we have succeed with English, with students who are identified as special ed? We are not specialists in special ed, but everywhere we work, people say, but this is fabulous for special ed students, right, Leslie? They say, this works perfectly, come on. And they try it and it does work because we believe in cutting through to the core of key ideas, making ideas rigorous and interconnecting them, and then amplifying the opportunities by coming in through different ways of understanding, grappling with issues, and eventually apprenticing into those practices that we are teaching students. So I think that, to sum up, I think that our approach would work for most special education students. Now, there are students at one end of the continuum that are severely affected, and with those students, we honestly are not experts at saying what to do. We have worked with them at times. I remember in Portland, for example, in elementary schools, but there are cases that are really severe, and those we don't know much about.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sarah?
I think Erica, I think Erica combined the questions.
Oh.
Yes?
Yes,
I did.
Yeah, you did.
I got them
Yes.
both covered. Okay.
So I'm going to take the next one. Erica, did you have a follow-up?
Nope, that was it. I was just cross-referencing to make sure I covered the entire portion of Diana's question.
Diana, are you satisfied?
Yes, I'm good. Thank you.
You're welcome. So can you tell us what do your assessment snapshots look like, and how do you track the trend lines of progress?
We think that standardized assessment plays a role in the education of children, and that role belongs with leadership. It's a reduced role. We think that the most important role of assessment belongs with a teacher that is continuously observing students and understanding how they are growing in order to offer them opportunities to accelerate their development. In other words, we believe very strongly in formative assessment. Assessment of learning, our students are learning for learning to inform what to do next. And in fact, in the materials that we would use with you, if we get to work with you in capacity building, the materials embed a number of instances that enable teachers to see what students can do. Furthermore, we believe very strongly that assessment is something that students need to do. They need to understand where they are at the moment. They need to understand where they're headed, what is the vision, and they need to understand what to do in order to get there. And so that they become increasingly in control of their own learning. They develop agency, they develop voice. I once taught for 6 years in a high school in Salinas. And I was always surprised that students would come and say, Ms. Walke, how am I doing in your class? And I thought, why don't they know? So I put a lot of emphasis in helping them understand this is what is expected this month. And this is the way in which we can all get there. And then for students to keep a portfolio of their own work. And today, and with everything we have learned through the horrible pandemic, we can have students record themselves, videotape themselves, doing something and videotape themselves a month later, and then compare and say, how far are you still from where you should go? And what are you going to do about it, right? So assessment is not just the province of teachers. Assessment needs to belong with learners as well. One final thing I want to say, WestEd, the board of WestEd met last Thursday and Friday, distantly as well, and they invited me to do a presentation on our new center. But that enabled me to hear Roberto Rodriguez, who has been a really important person in Washington, D.C., advising. When I first met him, he was a baby. He was working with Ted Kennedy in his education committee, but now he is working with the Biden administration. And what he said is that, and I know Mr. Cardoso totally agrees with that, that the new educational plan will diminish the importance of standardized testing and will increase the importance of teachers learning to see how students are grappling with things in order to invite them at the next step to do something that will propel their development. And I know that sounds very difficult right now, but that's exactly what we do, for example, when we are, well, we're all women here, when we are mothers, right? Mm-hmm. If you have a baby that is learning to walk, then you hold him initially, but if the child is ready to take his first step, we know he'll fall, but we applaud. And the child takes a tumbling step, and then we continue encouraging him until one day he walks. But if when the child took a step, we would say, oh, stop it. You're not doing things right. Don't walk until you walk perfectly, which is what we tell our students. That would be absurd. It would really totally close the opportunities to learn. So we need to develop that eye in teachers, which is an eye that they have as human beings in other circumstances, but that unfortunately we have not cultivated enough in the classroom. I hope that answers your question. I think I got too excited about the example.
I enjoyed the enthusiasm. Okay, Dr. Case, did you have a follow-up?
No, actually, I didn't. I didn't have a follow. Well, let me say this. We did ask this before, but it did come up about the challenge of teacher recruitment. Mm-hmm. You know, and we do have a challenge. I know it's a national challenge, recruiting certified bilingual teachers. Any thoughts? You can solve the problems, but any thoughts?
No, but I think that, I have a few thoughts, and once again, they are in alignment with what Roberto Rodriguez did say on Thursday, that, the pool needs to be expanded, and it needs to be expanded by including teachers who, speak other languages, the languages of their students, and teachers and people who can become teachers. So there's going to be a pipeline of a different nature in the future. In the meantime, we run very exciting, equally exciting as the ones in English, professional development sessions in Spanish, where everything is done in Spanish. And the teachers, just like their students, can negotiate ideas in English if they want to, but the encouragement is at all moments to develop their Spanish. So we think that if we have teachers who are not fully bilingual at the moment, there's no reason why they shouldn't become fully bilingual after a while. It's once again that future-oriented pedagogy. We believe in their futures and their capacity, and we'll support them so that they get there.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'll turn it over to Sherelle.
Well, I just want to thank you for your enthusiasm and for taking the time to present to us today.
Thank you so much.
Yep, thank you. and have a wonderful evening. I don't know if
Thank
anyone
you.
else
It's
wants to
great to
add
meet you
anything.
all, and especially to meet a lovely child, although we never
Yes.
formally said hello. A future bilingual in the United States, right?
That's right.
Currently bilingual French.
Thank
So
you.
Oh,
that's right.
currently, okay, so multilingual.
That's
Yes.
right. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
Thank you very much,
Bye. Good night. Thank
Thank you.
you.
and I hope
Good
to
night.
see you sometime in the future. Bye-bye.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
so-
Bye,
Thank you.
Sandy. Thank you so much. Bye.
So,
Oh, right on time.
okay, yeah.
Right on
Whew.
time? Really?
No, that's okay. Roland, can we make sure she's? How
Are
are
we
we
okay,
doing?
Roland?
Has she left the meeting, Roland?
Yes, ma'am. I was just checking.
Okay. That's good. Roland,
Thanks, Roland.
yes.
No worries.
Roland's been great.
Where did Erica go?
Oh, she may be, I don't know. Well,
I don't know.
I don't see her. Maybe she got knocked off somehow. Yeah.
She might have
Well-
thought the meeting was over.
Oh, I
Oh,
see. Well, we
Yeah.
do have plans, and Sherelle to meet tomorrow. Is that correct?
we do.
Reviewers and, to review and to debrief. So I think that will be an exciting conversation. Yes,
This is going to be a tough choice.
I know. I
Highly
know.
informative. Highly informative.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So
They
it's,
brought, yeah, it's,
go ahead. I'm
and
sorry.
did you want to say something?
No. She just said tough choice. I was going, and it is. I mean, two different companies with two different points of view. And tomorrow, as I said, we'll have an opportunity to, to really have a discussion. So I'll
Erica
make-
says she's in the waiting room.
oh, there she. Okay, Roland, can we admit her? Roland has taken over,
No, you're still in charge.
thankfully.
There
Thank
she
you.
is.
Roland, are you available for future meetings? That's all we want to know here.
I'm usually at every meeting unless it's on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
Mhm.
As long as I
Oh,
get the
my-
invite, I'm there.
Okay, well, you're invited to all of our meetings, Roland.
So Erica, we were talking about that it's a tough choice.
But tomorrow we'll have an opportunity to discuss,
Yeah.
right?
right,
We're meeting, I believe, at 5 o'clock. That was the agreement. And if there, I will ask Lucy to send out the link again in the morning, just to make sure that we all have what we need.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good for tomorrow. Okay.
For tomorrow. So
All
if
right.
everyone's okay, anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
Me.
Diana, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Erica, thank you.
Thank you,
So
everyone.
we'll adjourn the meeting at 5:55, and then we'll see you tomorrow at 5 o'clock.
Sounds good. Thank you. Good
Thank
night.
you so much all.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a
Great.
good evening.
You too.
Thanks, Sherelle.